Chelsea versus Brentford. We've got the lucky Christmas jumper on again because it has actually been working. We haven't lost in a game where I've done a preview in this Chelsea Christmas jumper, so we're going for it again, and we will be going for it throughout the festive period until it fails. Anyway, let's get into the tactics board because we're going to discuss how Chelsea can exploit this Brentford side. And a lot of people, rightfully so, are thinking this could be a tough game, and it very much could. Brentford have scored 31 goals this season, but 26 of them have come at their own ground. This game is at Stamford Bridge. They've only scored 5 goals away from home. Now, they have played 7 away games, 2 of them against, I think, was it City and Liverpool or Arsenal? It's one of the other top sides, but definitely City. Whereas 8 games they have played at home and they've had some slightly easier fixtures, so that sort of skews it. But you can tell that they're a little bit more comfortable in terms of their goal scoring form, especially at home.
So here are the stats. Brentford holding 47.5% possession, sitting 12th in the league on this metric. Despite their 31 goals, Brentford are only taking 11 shots per 90, which is 16th in the Premier League metrics. But lastly, and most importantly, Brentford are conceding 18.2 shots per 90, which again is the second worst, the second most conceded in the Premier League.
But we're going to break down how they play, how Chelsea could set up to sort of counteract this, and how they could look to build through them. Let's get straight into it. So, the back line, I expect to look something like this, and we're going to speak about why, because I think that Cucurella is I think he's going to play a big part in this game. I think Cucurella's role in this is going to be really big. I think having Gusto on this side, and again, we'll speak about that in a minute. And I don't think you need Lavia and Casado for this game. So I think that Enzo is going to play in this role. But we're going to speak about how the dynamic between Cucurella and Enzo could really affect this game. And then for Brentford, the people that we really have to speak about is their fullbacks and their wingers. They're the people in this team that are going to affect, again, how Chelsea sort of look to build and play out. And also on the sort of how they build up and where the space will be if Chelsea can win the ball back. So let's get straight into it. Let me get a pen ready so that I can draw things if I need to. Right. So firstly, I think Chelsea in possession. I think we're going to see something similar to the Spurs second half for this game, purely for a few different reasons, actually. One, because the passing angles are better that way with Gusto on the right, get those passing angles. Cole still gets into the middle, starting from that right centre-back, but still becomes that middle centre-back. And I think Badiashile is just much more comfortable here. And his passing is actually going to be really important because I think Cucurella and Enzo, this is where it gets interesting. Now, what often happens with Brentford and how they press is they'll press with this sort of front two of their number 10 and Visser, or the striker. Their wingers then sort of are in this drop coverage area. These two players will push up the pivot players and they will look to sort of trap onto these guys. So again, you've got the double pivot, which then leaves Mbermo and Sharda as those sort of wide coverage, okay? Now, where it gets interesting. Cucurella and Enzo in this game, I think we could see something that's a little bit sort of reminiscent of the Spurs game in the way that they rotate as the time makes sense. And what I mean by this is Enzo spoke about it before, Maresca has spoke about it before, how the fullback inverting can cause issues for the opposition's sort of pressing structure. And the way Mbermo often presses, he can be dragged inside very easily.
Here is a quick visual representation just to show you that Mbermo being dragged inside and where it can create that space for other teams against Brentford. You have that front two in the press ready to force play to one side and apply pressure on one of the wide centre-backs, whilst the other sort of midfield four, almost in a diamond shape in this instance, will then try to lock off central areas of the pitch and move side to side with their press to lock off those central progressive routes. However, as you can see with the white spot, which is something we're going to speak about, that is where the space will open up when you can drag their wingers inside, especially on Mbermo's side of the pitch.
So what I think we might see a little bit more of, in trying to almost split this gap largely as well with these two, and leave Palmer as that spare man, is the fact that Mbermo sort of comes into this area, which is why I think we might invert Cucurella a little bit deeper in this game. So if we'll put him in there, leaving Enzo in this sort of free pocket of space that we've seen him operating so nicely this season. What I think this could do is it will mean, first of all, they're not going to want to leave Palmer. So one of these guys is going to want to stay sort of pinned back. The other is going to jump onto Casado because they're not going to want to leave that completely open. So now what you've got is essentially, if we just get rid of those arrows, you've got a big gap forming between the two pivot players, and then you've got Kukurea free. So Mbeumo then has the decision to make of whether to sort of drop off into this space with Enzo or to follow Kukurea inside. And the beauty of this is, because it will be a rotation, it won't be sort of a fixated position, is when Enzo's in here and Mbeumo's going to be in here anyway, and then the decision will come where Enzo sort of peels outward into these little pockets of space and he's sort of trying to receive the ball between the lines, which will then leave Mbeumo in that sort of state of decision where sometimes he might go really tight to Kukurea, try to stop them playing through the middle here, and it'll sort of look like the pitch is split almost like that. But then at times, Mbeumo may then follow Enzo because he's like, right, I'm not going to let Enzo get on the ball in that free sort of area of space. In which case, Kukurea is now the spare man in this sort of position here. And he's the one that can then sort of get the ball, bring players into play, look for these little gaps, and just keep it simple, but also keep it moving. Now, where it gets interesting again on this side of the pitch is I think there's two different ways that Chelsea can sort of navigate this in terms of how to attack Sepp van den Berg. Because, as I said, Mbeumo can get pinned in fairly easily into this central area, which means not only can Enzo receive it in here, but also Enzo can take sort of his runs into this pocket of space to try and receive it, to then play it into Sancho, who can get into these 1v1 positions. Van den Berg, I don't think he's been very good this season, honestly. I think he's had some really tough games. I think if you can get at him 1v1, I think we could have some real joy on this side of the pitch. So I do think that sort of a big part of this game is pinning Mbeumo inside with Kukurea and also trying to get that 1v1 with Berg as much as possible. And this can be done in two different ways. This could be done here with Kukurea dropping in deep, but it could also mean that at times if Enzo's in here and Kukurea inverts a little bit higher, again, does Mbeumo stay or does he sort of go with Kukurea? The only reason I think it might be this way round is because I think the idea of having that free man as Enzo instead of Kukurea in this instance, where Mbeumo is likely to be the one being pinned inside, I think you want this man to be Enzo so that one, he can get that ball to Sancho, and then he can continue his run, because something Enzo's been doing really well lately that I don't think he's getting enough credit for. And we touched on it in our last video, which was the, well, not our last video, but one of the videos we did this week about Enzo Fernandez, is that he's making these selfless runs, which allows Sancho to come into this space. And it happened against Tottenham for his goal. It allows Sancho to drive inside. And Enzo being sort of the spare man in here, he's doing a really good job of sort of connecting play, playmaking himself, attacking the box late himself, but also then supporting the likes of Sancho. On the other side of the pitch is another place where it gets interesting, funnily enough, but this time more so in possession. So let's put this all back really quickly to the out of possession-ish shape that Chelsea will probably be in, which at times is sort of that 4-1-4-1. Again, Enzo can drop a little bit deeper at times and it can look a bit more like sort of like this. But the point being is they'll set up in this sort of 4-2-3-1/4-3-3, damn guard a bit deeper. But Lewis Potter is sort of like that. He's that overlapping fullback in the sense of Sharda will sometimes drop inside. Potter will make the run into here to sort of form that attacking five. And then you end up with almost a sort of a lopsided 3-2.
Again, just to give you that visual representation, when Brentford are in a bit of sustained possession, forming that 3-2. Against Chelsea, I expect this to be the likes of Van den Berg, Collins, and then Pinnock at right centre-back, with Lewis Potter marauding forward to provide left-sided width, and then that pivot 2 staying in there with Damsgaard pushing a bit higher up.
Here, for their build-up. Now, this is in more settled possession, if they get settled possession, and I do expect Chelsea to try and pin Brentford back for as long as possible. But with this being said, once these rotations sort of take place and you end up with that front five, the space for Madueke, if he sort of stays one, he is going to have to follow Lewis Potter. But the potential to then attack this channel, either one himself driving into there, or two, having Jackson sort of spin off into this channel where he can cause some damage, or even Palmer, who's going to be sort of around here, can he spin into this channel and receive the ball? Even if it's not running away from them, even if it's to receive the ball and then wait for support from Madueke, from an Enzo, from a Sancho, from a Jackson. But this channel is there to be exploited if Brentford turn over the ball during their rotation. So what is interesting about this game is I think the two flows that you need to watch out for is in possession for Chelsea, slower, sort of sustained possession for Chelsea. I think the key is this triangle here. The movement of Cucurella and Enzo to Pin and Burmo, and the ability to get Sancho on the ball running at Van der Berg. However, I think when Chelsea are out of possession, which I do think Chelsea are going to hold a lot more of the ball, so I think the secondary sort of bit that we're talking about here is going to be less frequent. But when Chelsea don't have the ball and Brentford get a little bit of sustained possession themselves, then it's sort of a way of attacking this channel. So I think sustained, slower progression down the left side, but outlet football to go quickly and direct, much more down this right-hand side. So that is what I expect to see from this game. Let's see what we get in. Let's see what we get from the game. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video. Comment any questions you have about Brentford, and I will try to get back to you on those ahead of the game. Give me your score predictions in the comments down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.